How do I share the gospel using Halloween?
I usually do this. Have you had experiences in the darkness that you can't explain, that freak you out? Like, have you experienced things late at night? And have you known something's there? I have not yet met one person that has said, nah, okay, so you've experienced the dark side of it. There's a light side. Yeah. And it's good. And it's pure love. Because most people have watched horror films, pornography, seen stuff, experienced things. That opens themselves usually up to the dark side of the spiritual world. So they have experiences and they don't talk to anyone about it because then they think people call them crazy, but everyone's had one.
Welcome to the yesHEis podcast, where we talk about sharing your faith with confidence so that you can play your part in helping the world know Jesus. Alrighty, welcome to the yesHEis podcast for another episode
of the yesHEis podcast. That was a real Ace Ventura opening just then.
Actually, it was
alrighty then.
Alrighty, people. Welcome, Sam.
That sounded a little bit Donald Trump.
Yeah, Ace Trump.
Yeah.
Anyway,
cool.
Welcome. Our guest today, Jono Gullo. It's good to have you on the podcast.
It's a delight to be here at Cottontree.
It's good to have you on the pod with us today, Jono.
But let me introduce you to people who may not know. You are a pastor. You are my pastor, Suncoast Church on the Sunshine Coast.
Come on.
You're an apologist as well. I put that on my little notes. This is what we're going to talk about today, is apologetics and all this stuff. So I would call you an apologist. But what makes someone an apologist, and would you call yourself that?
Oh, I mean, I would definitely call myself an enthusiast, an apologetics enthusiast.
Yeah.
I'll leave it to you to decide whether I am an apologist.
Yeah.
You know, I studied for a few years at uni, and I've probably spent the last 22 years personally just reading
books.
And studying. So it's certainly something that's been a bedrock in my own personal faith. I never chose it. It just gripped my heart as probably an 18-year-old. And I just kept pulling the thread. And so I'm at 40 and I love it. I think it's not just something that I think is a great addition to people's spiritual growth and their discipleship, and obviously incredibly fruitful approach to evangelism. Certainly not the only one or the major one, just a one. But put all that aside, it's been continually life-giving to my own faith, and I enjoy it.
Yeah, that's great. We're going to talk a whole lot more about apologetics and evangelism today. But the two other things that I wrote down were Italian and endurance athlete. Now, I feel like they might be related because there's a certain energy that you have as an Italian, associated with your Italian heritage. And I feel like to be an endurance athlete, there's a certain energy sort of needed for that. Is that related in any way?
It is related, but not how you think. So
carb loading, is that?
Yes, actually, you got it straight away. So there's an old Italian proverb, and I learned this, funnily enough, in Italy, and I was going for a run with a running club there, and I'll never forget. It was an amazing day, and I hit a certain distance that day that I'd never done before.
You can brag.
No, it's all right. But I was very enthusiastic. I felt like I'm an elite ultra athlete. It was a big moment for me. And I ran with a whole lot of terrific runners and they helped me get across that line. Anyway, at the end of the day, I feel like I'm like the fittest man in the world. And so afterwards, this club went to a cafe to celebrate. This is downtown Rome. They got all their pastries and coffees. And I was so confused. I thought we might go to a juice bar, have some kale or something. So I'm like, well, aren't we we're fit, And I remember asking them in my broken Italian and their broken English, aren't we supposed to be healthy and eat fit? And they said, no. They said, we don't run to be healthy. I'm like, what do we run for then? And number one, for the mind. And number two, so we can eat more food. So I'm like, that's great. So just the more food I enjoy, the further I've got to run. So both sides of my family are Sicilian, immigrants from both sides out to Australia. And and that's love that part of our cultural heritage. And probably my absolute favorite joy in life is running.
Yeah. And you do it for the mind, for the spirit. Why do you do it? Because you want to punish.
And the love handles.
And the love handles. And so you can eat.
No, to be honest, I think we live in a body. We just do. It's a limit God's given us, and we have to be good stewards of everything God's given us. And my wife and I have talked about this all the time. It's one of our biggest values is longevity, and we want to be old people one day who are still effective for Jesus in our life,
Yep.
whatever form that takes, whatever expression that takes.
That's great.
And you have to live in a body. And so we want to be good stewards of it. And I'm just a big believer, find whatever you love doing and do that.
Yeah.
And I just, running's just clicked with me. So it's
Great.
It's a good way to defrag, to de-stress, good way to hear from God. I like going in the bush and up mountains. That's where I do most of my running and get on the trails. And
Nice.
yeah, it's life-giving.
That's
Great.
Love
So
that.
good. All right. So let's get into it. You have a ministry called Sophos Ministries. And as part of that, Logos forums, and those are big words. Well, they're small words, but they are from another language. Do you want to just paint a picture of Sophos and Logos? Because it's all related to this bigger topic of apologetics and just paint that picture.
Hello, my Earth friends. Welcome to the yesHEis podcast. And this is a subtle reminder that if you've not yet liked and subscribed, then you're missing out on blessings from on high.
Exactly what he said, although it sounded a little bit like a weird televangelist.
It did, didn't it? Back to the show.
Yeah, well, it's early days. So I appreciate you, giving it some airtime. So the idea of Sophos, the word Sophos essentially means wisdom. So if you think of the term philosophy, made up of those two words, philos, Greek word for
love.
Very good. And Sophos. So it's the love of wisdom. That's philosophy. That's why people like
I love that.
philosopher. So Sophos is an approach of to Christians to help give a platform and opportunity for Christians to think and discuss and debate, for Christians, right? To train them in apologetics, train them to give a defense of the faith, which is what apologetics means, to give a defense. And more and more, we find that's a huge ache, I'd say, in the body of Christ. There's just so much content that we all digest. And so to provide opportunity for people to flesh this out, I think speaking is so important, because when things just stay thoughts in your head, they can often be clouded a little, and you need to flesh stuff out and discuss. It kind of unravels some of your thoughts. So we love opportunity for people to think and to speak and to talk. So that's Sophos. And then an outward expression of that, like I guess you could say a ministry of Sophos, is Logos forums, which are events that we help host on university campuses. They're not Christian events. They are public events. We have public debates with all different worldviews and religions around themes and topics and discussions that students pick. And we do that publicly in debate. And then we open it for Q&A from the student body. And so they are proving to certainly scratch an itch that doesn't seem there's too much of that happening on university campuses these days, which allows for open debate and discussion. And we put some pretty good parameters around, these are our values when it comes to it. And so a lot of the student communities and bodies that are part of it, they're not of faith background. And we really want to protect that, because we think Christianity over the years has provided so much good for all of society, not just for the church. And I think Christianity should still be doing good things, even for those who aren't Christians. And we're finding Logos forums are helping to create an environment, whether you're faith-based or not, to have good reason, impassioned debate, discussion with respect and consideration.
Just to paint like a detailed picture of that. So you founded this at like ANU, the Australian National University.
Yeah.
This is like in Canberra. So this is like the hub of like political and social thinking in Australia.
Yeah.
And this is in like a lecture hall. This is in a university bar. This is
all the places,
like all of the above. And it's like your favorite biology professor who's an atheist versus you. And we're talking about this spicy topic. And you just go for it.
We just go for it.
And then you open the floor for Q&A.
100%. And then we do kick-ons afterwards. It gives a chance just to then bro down with all the student bodies who are there, and
that's great.
Hanging out with the professors. And I've just been, number one, been blown away by the generosity of ANU. They've helped develop, they've made room for this kind of stuff to happen, which has been awesome. A lot of unis don't, and to their shame, because I think universities should be a place where all
open
ideas,
debate.
That is a place where stuff should be teared apart, not people, but ideas. And it's, unfortunately, that isn't always the case. So one of my goals is through Logos and with students' help, I'd love to see this stuff open up in unis all over Australia, if not the world. Certainly the feedback we get from a lot of the professors lecturers who come and debate, they're like, this stuff, I haven't seen this happen on universities for 20 years. I'm like, let's do that. So again, I really want to reiterate though, that it's not a Christian event, but there's always the Christian worldview is put on trial like every other worldview. That's great. And it's such a fun environment.
And like you were saying, like non-Christians are getting into it. Like, isn't there like non-Christians on the team for Logos organizing these events?
Yeah, 100%.
Like, I love that.
Yeah, it's really cool. And it keeps it honest as well. And again, I don't know what your guys' experience was. I remember going to university when I was first out of high school. And, this is like early noughties. And it was an interesting era where it was kind of that first shift where Christianity was seen no longer as this like, you guys are those goodies in the corner, to a bit like, hang on, your ideas aren't palatable anymore to us. So, I grew up in school where you just get paid out for being a Christian. But then it started becoming like, your Christian view, I don't know if we want to hear that anymore. And so I remember being in those kind of debates. I studied sociology at uni. And so a lot of this stuff would come up about religion's influence on society, et cetera. Right. And I started first notice, this is probably what first sparked me to think about apologetics is like, we have not only just, it's pretty important that the Christian voice stays within the public realm, but also I have no idea what I'm talking about. And so instinctively I was like, I know what I want to say, but I don't know the words. And so that's kind of what first prodded me to be like, I need to read and learn about this stuff. And I quickly found out there's like, almost 2,000 years of good Christian tradition of very smart men and women thinking deeply about things. Yeah. And in some ways, this Christian apologetics really helped to form so much of modern philosophy in a lot of ways, So the world in general has a lot to thank Christian thought for. Right. And to be frank, even moving forward, the world is going to need Christian thought more and more because it's one of the last remaining worldviews that holds to any idea of an absolute that you can know truth, you know, and that logic is a real thing that you can know. That's the idea of the logos. It comes from, that's where we get the word logic. And, this is delving right into it, but like,
no, jump in.
If you think like the last gospel that was written, John, all the other gospels, had been written. So John's there as an old man thinking, I've got to add something new, and he's had decades and decades of Christians, more and more Christians joining the faith. So he's like, what can I say about Jesus to try and get this across to a broad audience now that who's this Jesus guy? All these Christians everywhere. So he reaches for the word, and John 1, he says, in the beginning was the word. Now that's our English translation, but it was translated from the word logos. In the beginning was the logos. So it's better translated, in the beginning was the logic. And the logic was with God, and the logic was God, right? Yeah. The logic was there in the beginning when God formed all things. Then it concludes by saying, and then the word or the logos or the logic became flesh and dwelt among us, right? So John's saying, how do I get across who, Jesus is? And it's fascinating to me that he picked this word. He was the logos, because in the first century, particularly in, the Greco-Roman world, the logos was a well understood, already well-developed idea. It wasn't a Christian idea. It was a Greek idea. Your classics like your Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, they'd really fleshed this idea out. Yeah. But when they followed along the idea of logic and, exploring the world and measuring things.
So then, hang on, they're trying to find like a point of truth.
So they were looking for it. Yeah. And then the problem was they eventually got to a point, this was just, probably in the century before Jesus arrived, where they started to abandon the idea of the logos a little bit because their logic led them to a conclusion they weren't happy with. Right. And the conclusion they all led to is that there is an absolute, that there is a singular beginning, that there is an absolute logic, that there is a one singular point of reference for all things. There is one God. And with obviously in Greek and Roman culture, there were many gods and they didn't like that.
It messed with their idea.
It messed with their idea. So they kind of abandoned it as an ideal. It was still out there as an idea, but not as the ideal. But John's like, you guys were close. And so he grabbed this idea of, you can know absolute. You can know truth. You can't, the logos is a real thing and it's a person. And the logos, that one embodying spirit that you guys were searching for, became flesh and dwelt among us, and his name is Jesus. So that's so good. So right there from the very beginning, this idea of the logos or the logic was hand in hand with Christian belief, which is why it's funny why, Christianity in the modern world is often being criticized as, you have to check your brain out at the door. Like you believe blindly. Nah, from the very beginning, the first followers of Jesus were like, no. The reason we believe is our logic led us here to believe,
100%.
Yeah. Would you say that that opening section of John is an apologetic? Like sort of exploring this idea of like what is apologetics? Was he doing apologetics with that?
That's a great question.
Because he's taking something that was sort of a known idea that wasn't sort of natural Christian thought.
Yeah, definitely. Almost mirrors what happened with the Apostle Paul in Athens. So if you recall that story in the book of Acts, he's in Athens, he looks around, and to me, this is unbelievably fascinating. If you recall the story, he gets there, and this is Athens. What do we know about Athens in the first century?
Like just a mecca of ideas and gods and spirituality and
well, it's a center. It was a
religion.
center. We talk about it's it's where the birthplace of democracy, the birthplace of reason, all these ideas. But yet when Paul gets there, what does he notice?
All the gods,
all the idols,
all the idols. Yeah.
Now think of this, okay? Because I think it mirrors our modern world. He gets to Athens. Paul was one of the. He's up there as a philosopher. He was arguably up there with Aristotle's, right? Brilliant mind. So he gets to Athens where it should be like, okay, here we go. The smarts are all here. And he's infuriated because in what should have been the smartest city in the world, they were given over to idols. He's like, how can a culture that is so smart, be worshipping idols? And it infuriated him. Now mirror that with our age.
Right.
We're the most allegedly intelligent, advanced scientific age. And why are such unlogical ideas given such profound platform now? Anyway, that's another debate for maybe later on. But so Paul gets there, sees this, and he started out having the chat in synagogues. He's like, I'll have it with other, people who have an idea of God. Then eventually they're like, no, you got to come talk in the marketplace. So he gets there. And what he does, this is to your question about was John given an apologetic? Paul, he doesn't reach for chapter and verse. He doesn't quote Bible at all the philosophers in Athens. What does he do? He uses their own philosophies. In fact, he quotes two separate poets of their era. And if you read through the account, I don't off the top of my head remember the poet's saying, but you can look back like they were well-established poems, and he quoted both of them in their search for reason and meaning and truth, saying this is all culminated in the person, the resurrection of Jesus. So he took their modern language, their modern songs and poems, and used it to present the gospel of Christ. In the same way, I think John, in a way, was, he was presenting this big idea. Because if you think about it, what was he doing? He was and this is what a good apologetic does. He was tapping into a longing inside of people. They were longing. They want, and this is what I think comes to apologetics tact. People need to want Christianity to be true before they're open to whether or not it is true. And that's an important distinctive, particularly in the modern West.
Yes.
Because a modern atheism is less of an intellectual atheism and more of a mood.
Explain that.
So most people, if you push them on why they don't believe, they don't have often a sound reason. They've got emotional platitudes around it. And I'm not saying they're less important. They are important, but that's just the unique dynamic of our day. People I don't want it to be true. Yeah, well, it's a mood, right?
Yeah.
Some of the ideas I've heard about Christianity, I don't like, so I don't want this to be true. So it's a mood.
Yeah.
So, and they won't talk to you about, well, let's break that down. They don't want it. There isn't an appetite for it. They've already drawn, which is intellectual ignorance and dishonesty. But say what you will, that's the world we're trying to engage with. So you have to. So John recognizes there is this longing in the first century for truth.
And there has been this pursuit.
There's been this pursuit.
Maybe been given up on.
Yeah, they've been given. That's right.
Yeah.
So there's a gap.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm going to tap into that, and I'm going to draw people's attention to you. You can know that longing there is a real longing. Don't ignore it.
Yeah.
And there is a fulfillment of that longing.
Yeah.
And his name is Jesus.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Isn't it amazing?
That's wild. And I think when I think of just that simple verse, Jesus says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. It's it just adds so much weight. It's particularly to the word truth. When Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, it's like there is so much more to that than just he is a truth, but all truth the pinnacle of all truth is Jesus, who is the Word, who is Logos.
Yeah.
That's why it's so fascinating that that's actually like the historical story.
Yeah, 100%.
Like I was so fascinated when I heard that, because it's like, oh man, like just people who didn't even subscribe to the Hebrew God are looking for truth, and they, they're getting to almost the right place.
Totally. I'm fascinated just like listening to you talk, and it makes me think about the fact that like all logic ultimately points to Jesus as the truth, and like scripture backs that up. But it's like there is sometimes I feel like today in our age, and you've just kind of tapped on it a little bit here, where there's almost like a barrier where someone meets that barrier and then they're not, call it maybe laziness. I don't know. We all experience that, myself included, where you're not willing to push through and do the hard work of thinking and being challenged in order to put your, what you believe to the test, or be uncomfortable enough to be able to be wrong. Are
you talking about Christians or non-Christians?
Yeah, everyone.
Yeah.
Whereas
I'd see that on both sides.
Yeah, 100%. And I think all people, if you think enough and you are challenged enough, like we would say that all logic ultimately leads to Jesus, but it's like there's a bit of a barrier for a lot of people where it's like my feelings get in the way, or the idea that truth is subjective has gotten in the way, where it's like your truth is different than my truth, and that's just a way of saying don't challenge my beliefs.
Yeah. Yes, it is. It is a way of saying that.
Yeah, and it's the more you think about it, the more, I don't know, the wilder it is, and it's that's the world that we live in today.
Yeah, one of the things that was so liberating, the further I delved into the idea of the pursuit of truth, is I came across this idea. It's not my idea. It's something that I stumbled across. The joy of being wrong. The joy of being wrong. In other words, as you are open to learn and to grow, and if your appetite isn't just to have your biases confirmed, but I want what's true, you will quickly discover you're wrong about a lot of things. That is a liberating thought, because I hate living in ignorance. I hate it.
Yeah.
So when someone draws out to me, that you can know this there's the deeper truth to this, and I discover that, I'm like, oh, thank you so much. Like, I can't believe I was living in a lie. Like now, because the truth will set you free.
Yeah.
And so I find, isn't that amazing? So I'm like, there's joy in being wrong.
Yes.
So where our culture is like, we hate it. I don't want to be wrong. I'm right. And that's, Paul talked about that. He said one day, people just want to do what's right in their own eyes. They want to know what is right, just what's right in my eyes. Yeah. So there is this liberty of thought when, I just realized I was wrong about something. Now I'm set free because I know what is right. So there's so much freedom in being open to the idea of being wrong. And again, less and less dominant worldviews platform that as a virtue. Rather than, you can't say a person's wrong, that's their truth. I'm like, I know what you're trying to say, but you're actually not helping them. You're imprisoning them.
Yeah.
Where Jesus says you'll know the truth.
Yeah.
And you'll know that it's not just the truth will set you free, knowing it will set you free.
Yeah.
So in other words, Jesus, and I think he was the smartest man who ever lived.
Yeah.
He said the truth is something you can know.
Yes.
So even when he stood before the authority of his day, Pilate, mere hours before getting crucified, and he's saying, everyone who is on the side of truth, in other words, anyone who's actually not just after a happiness quest, which most people are, because if you're actually searching for truth, he says, they'll listen to my voice.
Right.
And remember what Pilate said back to him?
What is truth? What do you think he was saying there? Like, can you know truth? Like, what even is truth?
Probably.
Yeah.
But that's how ambiguous it's been forever.
Yeah.
So the idea of truth has been there, but like this was the most advanced civilization at the time, the Roman Empire. And there's a guy obviously must have had the smarts. He'd risen to leadership, and he's standing and looking truth in the face. And truth said to him, all those who want truth, they'll be attracted to my voice. And he's staring truth in the eyes.
Wow.
And Pilate goes, what's truth?
Wow.
Now, you can deduce a lot of things from that reply, but people are still saying the same thing right now.
Yeah.
So you can imagine someone like Pilate, he wasn't on a truth quest. He had responsibilities, he cared about maintaining his authority, He had, so the other things there that were important besides truth, where for Jesus, what mattered most was truth.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought that he wasn't on a quest, because going back to what you were talking about, the joy of being wrong, is that how you worded it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think the immediate thought in my head is, I know people who that's the opposite of what they would feel, where it's like there is joy in being right, and they are petrified of being wrong. But I think in this person's mind, that stems from a convolution between my ideas being wrong and me as a person being wrong.
Yeah.
And that stems from a heart desire to be right or righteous. And that's something that God's placed within us.
Yes, he has.
And so our desire for righteousness has, when it's misplaced, I guess
it wants to win arguments.
It just wants to win arguments rather than be righteous, not by pursuing righteousness in our own efforts, but by pursuing Jesus, the truth.
Yeah.
And so not everyone is on a truth quest, but they are on a righteousness quest,
a happiness quest,
or a happiness quest, or a comfort quest, because that's what makes me feel righteous.
Too right.
Yeah.
Can I just play devil's advocate to your? Actually, I'm not playing devil's advocate. I'm revealing something that I struggle with that statement, because I agree with it, and I think it's definitely it's the landscape and positioning that is the most healthy. Let's be okay to be wrong. Let's be open to other ideas. The thing I struggle with it is that I'm a kind of person that can see both sides of things, and so if I feel like I'm genuinely on a quest for truth, I enjoy like robust arguments, but if the person I'm talking to isn't sitting on that same footing and they're out to win and they have a really good argument, and like sometimes I'm listening to their argument and the empathetic part of my brain is like, I get it. I get how you're thinking this. And if I don't have a response that seems logical to me, or I'm just like intimidated, I'm just like, that's like, I can be happy to be wrong, but then I'm like, well, what use is that to me in that environment? I just have to be like, oh, I feel wrong and I feel like you won and you're out to get me, and that's the end.
Yeah.
So that's, I'm not saying it's like, what would you say to a person, I guess, who then feels intimidated like that?
And to be honest, man.
And maybe I'm asking for me.
Not just for your friends.
That's right.
I would say most of us feel like that most of the time, to be honest with you, just to genuinely to affirm. I wonder if that's why so many Christians hesitate to share their faith and evangelize, because I'm going to be asked questions and I don't have a good answer for it.
Yeah.
So that,
and you've been there.
I am regularly there.
You put yourself in that scenario.
The lines then.
You've been there in a public
which
forum.
is to the first point. If you think about the prayers that the first Christians prayed most regularly, it was God give us boldness and courage to pray. So there's no to do this. You have to have a measure of uns, and so the disciples saw fit to pray for that. Like, God, give us, give us courage, give us boldness, right? So there's that. But also, like, this is getting into the real, like, the guts of apologetics. So the word we get for apologetic comes from a particular verse that the Apostle Peter wrote about. So we've talked about Jesus, we've talked about John, we've talked about Paul, and now we're at Peter. So Peter writes in
1 Peter 3:15.
1 Peter 3:15. Said, always be prepared to give the reason for the hope that you have, but do it with gentleness and respect. But that term, the reason for the hope that you have, is apologetica in the Greek, which where we get apologetics or defense. In other words, always be prepared to give a defense or the reason or the logic for the hope that you have. And I think where people get maybe a little bit intimidated, just to lift the pressure off, you don't have to defend the faith to its entirety, okay? No one has done it fully. So if you go, I can't defend
everything.
But Peter does say, always be prepared to give a defense for the hope that you have.
Yeah.
In other words, you might not be able to answer every question if someone's, and it is a Christian virtue to say, hey, got me. Christians should be okay to be able to, look, because it's not on us to defend it. The truth should be self-defendable. So do the best you can. And it is also a witness to say, that's a really good point. I'm going to go learn. Thank you for challenging. I'm going to go learn that more.
Yeah.
That is a witness, just so you know, because that stands out in our culture.
Yeah.
But secondly, Peter's like saying, take the pressure off of knowing everything about the faith. Just why do you believe? Like what was the logic? This is where he says you got to be prepared, and we'll delve into this. So what was the logic that led you to faith?
Yes.
Now, it's still faith. So there does come a point where the logic will only take you so far, and you do eventually have to believe because God in his infinite wisdom designed it that way. But there is a logic to faith. So Peter's saying, what got you there? What got you to a place where you were like, you know what? Putting all my chips on the table. I'm believing this.
Yeah.
But you got there somehow. You didn't just wish that yourself there. So, so Peter's just saying, think about it. You know, study, read, ask questions, grow, be discipled, all those things.
Yeah.
And then how did you get there?
Yeah.
And always be prepared to give an answer to anyone who asks you. Now, you can't answer everything.
Yeah.
Love that.
You know, so I wonder how many Christians have thought about what's your answer other than I had an experience at church, which may be part of it, but surely you had a story.
Yes.
People often talk about the point in which they believed.
Yeah.
You know, and we all do have a point where, you know, I put my hand up.
Yeah.
I went. But what's your logic that got you there?
Yeah.
What's your story?
Have you ever wanted to share your faith but felt unsure of what to say? Maybe you've hesitated, wondering if you'll have the right words or if the conversation will be awkward. Well, that's where the yesHEis app comes in. The yesHEis app helps you share your faith with confidence. It's packed with practical tools and resources to make sharing Jesus a natural part of everyday life. When you step out and share your faith, you can even log your actions and see them light up a world map alongside others sharing their faith around the world. So if you're looking for a simple way to step out and make a difference, download the yesHEis app today. It's free, it's simple, and it will encourage you to share Jesus with confidence. And now, back to the show. I want to double down on that for a second because with yesHEis, what a big part of our previous strategy was to curate and produce video content. A lot of that was testimonies. So I watched a lot of like people's testimonies of like, how did you come to faith? And the thing that stood out to me over that time was that a lot of the way we talk about how we came to faith and in these particular videos was obviously for a Christian audience, because there was a lot of context that we kind of understood. A lot of the videos would be like, I was in drugs or I was sleeping around or like my life was falling apart, like, you know, big problem. And very superficially, a lot of them would say, then I went to church, I heard a sermon where it felt like the guy had read my mail and he asked if anyone wanted to follow Jesus and I put my hand up and I went to the front. And I'm like, okay, as Christians, we all celebrate that because we're like, yes, someone put their faith in Jesus. But as a defense for the reason for the hope that they have, that someone read your mail and that you put a hand up in a big gathering kind of sounds a bit culty. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not downplaying like the significance of their journey, but the way you've talked about it hasn't highlighted it in a way that would be helpful for someone who doesn't get the bigger picture.
Yeah, that so, highlights it as Jesus is a solution to the problems that I'm experiencing, but it doesn't highlight Jesus as the truth, the overarching absolute truth.
And I think what highlights that truth is them being like, okay, yes, that was what happened, but what was happening in your heart? You know, like, were you lonely and then you heard that Jesus was a friend? Or
even what was happening in your mind? Like, what questions were you wrestling with?
Yeah.
Like, what were your existential crises? And I don't know if you guys are finding there's more and more people are knocking on the door of Christianity because they've got genuine questions now. And the narrative that they've been told for the last 40 years is Christianity is just a crutch for people that have problems, you know, but now they're realizing, no, my life's fine. You know, I've got my house and the cars and the kids and the spouse and everything.
It's still not working.
But I've got these questions and all the stuff my culture has said is the prize. I've got these other questions that it's not answering. And the question won't leave me alone. And more as I'm looking around at how the worldviews that I've been raised on isn't creating a parent more flourishing. It seems like things are deteriorating a little bit. I have questions and my Gen X upbringing or my millennial upbringing didn't answer it. So what's this ancient story about a man 2,000 years ago got to teach,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so people come with, and then what was their journey to get there? That's what I'm interested in because people are asking questions, genuine, honest, good questions. And I think I certainly knew when I was growing up, this is certainly not everyone. I don't want to cuss Spurgeons, but certainly in some of the circles I grew in, there wasn't heaps and heaps of avenues or an appetite to meet people at the point of their questions. It was very much, we just got to believe, And I think that ostracized a whole generation of Aussies who had honest questions.
Yeah.
And we hadn't done the work of building a good apologetic into evangelism.
Yeah.
That's great.
So I think we're forced now to do it. And it's a cultural moment where Christianity's appeal to logic, people are desiring, I hope this is true.
And what you're saying before about giving the reason for the hope that you have, this isn't just picking some random topic that you think might relate to your friend. It's going like, okay, what is, because the flow on is going, all right, if I just do a bit of soul searching and go, all right, what is the reason for the hope that I have? And you get that in your heart and your mind, you're able to communicate it. Then when you're communicating it, who are you communicating? Who you're talking to? You're talking to friends, and your friends know you. And so these big concepts that disembodied can be quite heavy and hard to understand. It actually becomes then part of a story.
Yes.
And your story, and people know you, they love you, they may not agree with your full worldview, but it helps invite them. It's an invitational way to talk about these big things rather than, it's like the word becoming flesh, or the logos becoming flesh. And I think, that's been super encouraging for me, especially as we've had more conversations about these.
Well, you touched on it, man, just then. Like, unpack that idea, the logos becoming flesh, right? So this is what's so beautiful about Christianity. There's the logos, which is this big idea, but in Christ, it became approachable, became flesh.
Yeah.
And that's what's got to happen for every person. So they're big ideas, this idea of logic and logos and reason and truth, eventually has to get down to something that they can, makes sense to me. It becomes flesh to them, And Christians and Christianity, that's one of its sweet spots.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take these big gnawing questions in the human soul and embody it and bring it down to something that's actually graspable. This is one of the things I absolutely love about the depth of Christian thought. Look at some of the greats, and a lot of different thinkers over the centuries have said the same thing, but a different word. So I'm going to butcher it, but it's essentially, Christian thought and Christian doctrine and Christian theology and Christian belief is deep enough that your most profound mystic can drown in its depths for their whole life, but also simple enough that a child can accept it.
Yeah.
I love that idea.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Because I'm certainly more on the child end, So, and again, that's Chesterton talked about this, I think in his book Orthodoxy about 100 years ago. He said that's one of the reasons he believes is because Christianity hasn't picked a side. It's both in full entirety. It's like it freely delved into the depths of all of these existential questions. And it's got so many banks to help you walk those. Like people who really delve in deep, Christianity's been holding them and teaches them how to walk it. But also there's so much liberty if you're like, that stuff just doesn't interest me. Like I have a simple faith. God strangely warmed my heart, as Wesley said, and I just love Jesus. And Christianity has all the room for that. And Chesterton was like, that's why I believe Christianity. It's both.
It holds both.
In full affirmation of both.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's because there are days that I just need a faith that's pretty simple.
Yeah.
And there are days where I'm grateful that I can delve into the deep end and not drown and not get lost.
That's great because my worldview, which is based on faith in Jesus, it can resonate with me in every single moment of every single day, for every single person.
Yes.
Because no matter what age or stage you're at, faith in Jesus can make sense.
Yeah.
No matter what you're facing, faith in Jesus can make sense. And it's actually the most, people are like, oh, that's just not my thing. Or like, I don't really kind of agree with that. But it's like, it's actually the most relatable thing in the world, which is wild when you think about it.
Well, think of this, okay? When like the crux of the Christian hope all hinges off an event, the resurrection. Like if that didn't actually happen, it was Paul himself. It was like, we all might pack up and go home. because Christianity didn't begin with a belief; it began with an event. That's what started the church. These apostles, the disciples, were like, after Jesus died, that was it. It was snuffed out. They all went home. That was it. A lot of men have lived and preached and then died, and that was it. But then Jesus pulled off what he predicted he'd do. He was resurrected, and they saw him. Now think of that. So for them, Christianity didn't begin with a belief. It began with what they saw.
Yeah.
They saw him alive. So remember what Thomas said? Because he was only OG that wasn't in the room the first time Jesus appeared to them. He was like, what did he say?
Unless I see the scars on his hands and feet.
So what's he saying
I'm
by
not going
that?
to believe. I need proof. Give me the proof.
Yeah.
Now they're saying, no, just trust us. We've seen him. We've seen him. Because that's great for you guys. Because I need my proofs. I need the things that I'm asking for. And now two things took place here. One, when Jesus eventually did appear to Thomas, what's amazing is Thomas was still with the other disciples in the room. Meaning, right at the start of the church, they still allowed room for doubters.
It's a safe place.
Oh, that's Christianity. Christianity is like you have to go all in before you. It's like God will meet you at the place of your doubt.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I'm not talking about church membership and all that. That's a whole other conversation. I'm saying Thomas was in the room. They hadn't boosted him because he didn't believe like they did.
Yeah.
He was still in there with his questions and doubt. Now Jesus rocks up, and this is just so amazing about Jesus. He went straight for Thomas, and he holds up his hands with his scars and says, look at my scars. This is the question you got. Here it is. And Thomas, what did Thomas say back to him? Do you remember? What's the first thing that came out of his mouth?
My Lord and my God.
They're faith words.
Yeah.
They're not logic and reason and like he didn't go, oh, it makes sense now. Or you convinced me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
He straight away went, I believe. Now, as beautiful as that is, because logic will get you up to a point where still faith will be necessary for everyone. You won't logic your way or reason your way all the way. It will get you to a point, then you need to believe it. But here's the real, the stickler for me. Jesus then said to Thomas, he goes, you believe because you saw, right? You saw the evidence. And he said this, blessed are those, and he's talking about us. He says, blessed are those who don't see and yet believe. In other words, all the men and women in the room who saw, Jesus took away essentially their choice to believe because they saw. So their faith in God was based out of literal seeing Jesus physically resurrected. Now, you and I, we don't get that.
I didn't get that. Yeah.
But Jesus called us blessed. So we have a blessing that the original eyewitnesses never had the chance to have.
Wow.
So in some ways he took it from them. He goes, you guys don't get a choice in this matter. You've seen now. Like for you to not believe, you are being irrational.
Yes.
Like you're turning away from logic and evidence.
Yeah.
And Jesus saying, but for everyone else who won't see me physically resurrected, but hear your testimony of what you saw, and you're going to hear your reasoned arguments, and the thing that gives you boldness and passion is because you saw a man that was crucified and buried, you saw him alive again. So they're going to, based off what you share, the rest of the Christians for the rest of humankind, they're going to have a blessedness that you will never know because your choice was taken from you.
So is it safe to deduce then by us looking at the process of how Jesus himself spoke about the process of coming to faith, it's like by design that we shouldn't have to have enough evidence to get us, to convince us.
Yes.
Like there's, the way it's designed is not that there's going to be this critical mass of evidence that a human will hear and then be like, right, I get it. And it's their understanding that gets them.
Yep.
There's always faith. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Well, I think the reason for that though is that God's not ultimately, like God wants your head, but ultimately your head is not his desire. It's your heart.
Yeah.
And your heart can't be like, it can't be reasoned into a position.
Yeah.
It needs to by faith step into that. And like
which has so much to us as we're sharing. It's like there's not the way to go about it is not to just be able to present all of the compelling evidence to just get someone across the line. It's like there's always going to be faith.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. But it makes me think like as you're talking, like where it puts this whole new perspective. And I've known this, I think, on one level, but I think the pennies dropped for me at another level, where when we read the New Testament and we're reading, the eyewitness accounts, the Gospels, we're reading, Paul and Peter, and what they've written is not as another fellow Christian, but as someone who's like, again, I've always known this, but I think it's just hit on another level. They literally saw the resurrected Christ, and so they're not writing these words from a place of just faith, but they're writing these words from a place of actual experience and rationality and logic. And it's like to disregard what you read on that paper is like, that's actually the most irrational response.
That's what John was saying, right? Back to the start of the conversation. He's like, guys, we saw it. Like we touched it. We heard it. I
can go even one step further with you. Okay. In the New Testament, there's a letter written by James. Who is James?
Jesus' brother.
Think of that for a second.
Yeah, that always catches me because he saw Jesus growing up and yet he calls him Lord and Savior.
So the first time we hear of James, do you remember what the Gospels tell us about Jesus' brothers and their response to Jesus?
Is this when he got kicked out of his hometown?
Nope.
No?
Jesus' brothers and mother, they will come looking for him and everything. And the brothers were mocking Jesus. Now think about it. You guys
have brothers. Actually, your brother has been on the podcast, just as a little aside. Cameron Gullo, what episode is it, Jesse?
62 on the money.
Go and check out 62.
Maybe surprised it wasn't episode 66.
Whoa, sibling rivalry.
Well, I can just say it's a Star Wars reference. It would make sense. He's a bit of a Sith.
Order 66.
Yes. Okay,
gotcha,
I see what you're
gotcha.
saying.
Sorry, played my card.
Hey, but
so you know what it's like to have brothers.
Always,
yes.
In the lore of Star Wars, there's always two Sith Lords.
There you go. Yes, it is.
Who's the other?
Yeah. I know who the other one is.
David.
So he, so James didn't believe at first. And why would you? What's it going to take for you to be convinced that your brother's God?
Yeah.
So it makes sense to me that James was like, nah.
Yeah.
But then what are you going to do when you were there, you saw your brother crucified and die, you were at his funeral, and then you see him alive? What do you do with that?
Yeah.
So that's why I called James a reluctant convert. And that's why if you read, what do you know about, like, what's the general vibe of James's epistle?
Like suffering, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of this, like all of Paul's and Peter's letters and John's all start with, greetings in the Lord, beloved, grace and peace to you. James is like, hello, when you suffer. Like, it's just this like, I saw Jesus on that. You've got to be a Christian. So again, to your point, right? So yes, when you look at it through that lens, these guys, they're just writing, we saw this and they're fleshing out. Then the belief part begins of, then what does this mean? So let's go to you use the point of then, so that, the evidence. So it's difficult if we're looking at apologetics. As apologetics means it gives all the evidence and it's a watertight argument that, yes, this is all true.
Convince people that this is true.
So what I found helpful, I learned this from Keller, the great late
Timothy Keller.
Tim Keller.
Great name.
He said, don't look at the terms of, you're not looking for proofs, because that's not how God ordered it, because proofs are what the apostles got, so there was no chance to believe. So he said, you're not looking for proofs. He says, look for clues.
Right.
Clues to God. And just that framework alone has really liberated my thought and going, okay, there are things that people say, if it can't prove it in science, it's not real. No. And again, this is something, Keller wasn't the only person who said this. And again, I'm going to butcher the statement, but something like this. It's one thing to say that science disproves there is a God. That's one thing to say. So it's a whole nother thing to say that science proves there are no other ways of knowing. It doesn't. Science sits in its field, and that's all it can speak to. Science cannot say there isn't anything outside of science. That's not its authority. And you talk to any honest intellectual scientist, they will know it has its limits and always will. That's not criticizing science. It was the great Christian thinkers who gave us the modern idea of science. Science 100%. Came from Christians who were like, how did God do it? They saw this is to the clues point. They saw that the universe was ordered.
And logical.
It was logical.
Yes.
And they're like,
Romans 1?
Yes. So Paul's like saying, we're without excuse. If you're being honest, you look around and going, it takes more faith to think that the order came from nothing. It actually makes most sense to be like, there was a designer. This design is too perfect, fine-tuned. So Keller would then say, you look at things like that, like the fine-tuning of the universe. That's a clue to there being a designer. Like I've heard it said before, if you get like a Rolex, is a classic one.
Yeah.
And all the bits that make up a Rolex, like all the tiny little bits.
Teleological argument.
Right.
Or
Yes.
Like that.
And you pull it all apart, put it in a box, right? So say all the individual bits of a Rolex watch, all the complexities of a watch with all of its things. And you scatter it, put it in a box, and you shake it up. And then boop, out pops a perfectly put together functioning Rolex. Everyone's like, nah, it can't happen. Impossible. Like, but you think the whole universe came together by accident. You can't even imagine a watch in a box. So just logically, Keller would say it's a clue that there is a designer.
Yeah.
Things like beauty. Why do we recognize and stuff? Why do we have to celebrate? What's that urge to recognize that is an objectively beautiful vista? Like, where does that come from?
Yeah.
Even the innate desire to want to know meaning.
Yeah.
That too is a clue that, maybe, so you start looking at it through that lens. I'm not looking for watertight evidence. I'm looking for clues.
Yeah.
Right. So again, to me, the fact that Christianity even exists is a pretty hefty clue, because these guys, the original eyewitnesses, they didn't get anything from their claims. Like if you were to say this is all made up, like history tells us something happened in the first century. You can't prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that Jesus was resurrected, but it certainly does say something happened that caused over 120 men and women to die. And it wasn't for political advantage. It wasn't for wealth. It wasn't for prestige. They lost their lives because something happened that was worth dying for. Right. So again, history is a clue. The fact that there's a Christianity, the fact that there's something rather than nothing. It's a clue. The innate desire for sacrificial love. Like where's the evolutionary explanation in that? It's a clue. So again, just keep looking through that. There's all these things. And the clues that get me and like I need might be different to yours. So, and likewise, and this is another thing to me that is evidence or clues to this all being true. The stumbling block for you or anyone, right? It's for you. The things like you might have your questions, your Thomas questions. And it's like, that's the hard part for me, that one. But for me, I'm like, oh, that's no bother to me at all. My ones. This is the hard part for me. And you're like, oh, that's not hard for me. That doesn't bother me. To me, that's a clue, because it's like, oh, there isn't a universal, we can't get a head around this. Like, for example, for me, the hiddenness of God, right? The fact that he hasn't shown himself. Like, why don't you show everyone? For some people, that's their thing. Why didn't God just make it easy? I'm like, no, in my mind, that's no issue to me. In fact, it makes total sense that God wouldn't go, poof, I'm real, pay attention, Yeah. That's no hindrance to me. But some people had honest conversations. That's their sticking point.
Right.
So again, that to me is evidence that, this is some truth around this, because there isn't a universal hurdle. Everyone has an individualized hurdle to this idea, So
which comes back to that 1 Peter 3:15. Like if we're, as the church, all just looking inside ourselves and what is the reason for the hope that I have, and just sharing that, then we'll help each other. We'll help everyone who's out there who needs to hear the gospel. I guess that's my encouragement to you if you're listening, is going, even as Jono just skated over a bunch of those topics there, there's probably one of them where your ears pricked up and you're like, hiddenness of God. Like, I'm really interested in that, or I love that. And then some of you have been like, man, that's a real issue for me. But that's again reflective of like, what is the reason for the hope that you have? And so those topics or those thoughts that you have inside where you're really coming alive, that's my encouragement of your starting point. If you're really wanting to get into this topic, start pulling those threads. For me, it was creation and reading books like The Case for a Creator by Lee Strobel. Like that to me is like, I can remember where I was sitting when I read about, all of these, the evidence for intelligent design. It had never crossed my mind that science in its pursuit for truth would uncover God. But when I heard it and I was starting to read these like studies that are just really well documented, I'm just like, that actually makes sense. If God is the truth and people are looking for truth and science has a process, why would we not find him? And it's true. There's, non-Christian scientists that believe in intelligent design. They haven't yet ascribed it to the God that we know, but they're like, that's the most logical position I could come to. Even that fact, I'm just like, what?
It's a clue.
That's a big clue, and it excites me. Other people are like, I don't really care about that. But that's fine too.
Yeah.
So yeah, to just kind of shift gears a bit, we put out to the yesHEis community on our social media. We asked the question, what are some big questions that you have? What are some questions maybe that you would not want to be asked by people that you know and love when it comes to, apologetics? And so I just thought it'd be fun to throw some of these to you. And I think the rules are you've probably got 60 seconds. Give or take.
Because that's a realistic conversation.
To just kind of take a shot, take your best shot. But I'm aware as well of everything that we've been talking about, that there are starting points, there is evidence, there's talking points, but there's a bigger context as well. This is never, the talking points aren't going to be gotcha arguments that get someone across the line. So maybe even after you've kind of given the minute response, maybe just talk about some of those other things as well. Like we're talking about a particular topic. What do we have to keep in mind?
Great.
Does that sound all right?
I'll put on my pastoral hat.
Well, get your game face on first.
Awesome. Because we've got the most politically charged questions that we've been able to find.
Yeah. What if someone said, I'm happy with my life. Why would I want to become a Christian and feel bad about it?
Yep. I agree.
Why do you agree?
Well, that's fine. Like if you found that's a real hurdle for people. It's like if they've found their sufficiency in their life, fair enough. And this is one of the predicaments now of Christian evangelism and apologetics. In Jesus' day, this is an interesting thought. His audience, generally speaking, had a awareness of their depravity, because most philosophies, religious or not, affirm that there's something broken in the soul of man, and most religions were set up to help either placate that or find solution for that. So when Jesus preached the gospel message, that's why it was referred to as good news, because it was literally like, this is what we've all been waiting for, an answer to our problem, like divine forgiveness. Holy moly, that's everything. Where in our culture, we're told we're fine, you're all great, you've hit the jackpot, life is good. The system is the problem. You're not evil, you're not bad, you have no innate problem. As long as you've got all the outer markings, you're fine, and any evil in the world is an external evil. So Christianity has a problem now of actually presenting the bad news first, that we are sinners, we are separated from God. And before it can actually then give the good news. So it's like a doctor coming to say, you got to tell you something. You're actually sick and you didn't even know it. Really? Yeah. And I've talked to someone this week. They've got an illness, had no symptoms. When they got their checkup, the doctor's saying, we need to operate on you now. You've got a ticking time bomb. Didn't even know. So it's the same way. Christianity says there is a sickness that's killing humanity, and Christianity calls it out, but then it also has a solution for it.
Sorry, just a
good answer.
That's a great answer. My question is, obviously you can only do so much to help someone become aware of their depravity, but how would you, because this is a community member posing the question as the person
that's
they're talking
something
to.
We could be asked,
Yes.
And presenting Christianity is just like, well, why do I want to feel bad about myself? I'm good.
How would you point someone in a direction? Like, would you just simply ask questions and be like, well, what do you think about this?
No, I'd be a good neighbor. To someone like that, because I lived this,
be
a good neighbor, because there will be a day where it won't be great.
Right.
And then
Didn't this happen with your neighbor?
It's happened with a lot of my neighbors.
Yeah.
Hello, neighbors, if you're listening.
Yeah.
If things happen in their life and they look around, again, all my stuff no longer helps. Is there something else?
Yeah.
In those moments, they better have a Christian in their world. And you've better be a good witness and a good neighbor, and shown that you have a joy and a source of your happiness that is beyond stuff that you can purchase.
Right.
If God is good, then why is there suffering, and why doesn't he help those who pray all the time?
Okay, I'll give some talking points. What's the first part? If God is good, why is there suffering?
And why doesn't he help those who pray all the time?
There's several points to the suffering one, and I'm not answering it in its fully, but I'll just give people some. So suffering again points to, it's a clue to this. What are we saying when we suffer? Something's wrong. So it's an objective recognition that there's good and evil. Suffering is one of the ultimate evils that you cannot ignore. And so in our suffering, we recognize something's wrong. This is clearly not ordered correctly. Something's breaking down. So again, it's a clue that there's something bigger and there is an absolute, that we have the recognition of something's broken, something's bad, something's painful. Now, you don't want to apologetics that to someone when they're suffering, right? And someone's suffering, about that. You don't, you just want to love them. But if you do have those, and these are one of my big ones actually around suffering. Suffering points to me, this life isn't it. It's pointing to our longing. The fact that we have existential questions in our suffering is a clue to that we are made for more than just this present moment.
Existential questions like, this isn't right, there's got to be something more.
Or where is God in this? That's a longing. The fact that we reach for the divine in our suffering is a clue to me that there is the divine. Right. So it's a clue. It's not comforting in your suffering, but if you're thinking about it, that's the point. Secondly, that points to the issue of the fall, which is one of the core Christian orthodoxies, is that mankind fell from their ideal situation. We fell. God didn't push us. We fell. Mankind, in our own will, decided to go our own way, and we're living in the consequence of our own decisions. So there's that. So that's part of the question. Where's God when suffering?
Sorry, just to ask a follow-up question on that. The way that question was phrased was, if God is good, I think. If God is good. So how you're talking to someone about suffering, in the midst of that conversation, how do you then point to the goodness of God in the midst of that?
So there's several things. You got to start with Jesus. There's no avoiding. He's the biggest point of reference there. He suffered. And that's why I think it's the fact that, think of this, okay? The fact that the point of humanity's redemption was literal human suffering. So out of all the means in which God liberated sin from the human story was through what means? Suffering. Yeah. So to me, the divine said the most broken point of existence is human suffering. And so it's at that point I will meet you. And so to me, when I pray to a good God, I'm praying to a God who's actually suffered. And now that doesn't stop my suffering, but what it does do, it helps me find meaning in my suffering. Now, when you find meaning in your suffering, and we've all had to be there for a lot of people go through different levels of suffering. Because what is suffering? Because there's some suffering that we enjoy, right? Take a massage, those ones that are like, it's good, but it's like, it's good, or the suffering after exercise, right?
CrossFit.
So eventually there is a point in pain that ticks over to, no, this is only bad. Right.
Oh, okay. Like it was meaningful, but now it's not.
So it's learning. So we found meaning. I found meaning in that suffering. And then eventually, I haven't found meaning in this. So what faith in God does, it does help you find meaning. And the best book on the planet to read about that is Man's Search for Meaning from Viktor Frankl, who was a survivor of the death camps in the Second World War. And so he writes about his experience there, but he's a psychologist, and then he gave a lot of psychology around it. And now, while he wasn't a full-fledged Christian, he definitely said those who suffered the best and were those who found meaning in their suffering. And the vast majority of people who found meaning in their suffering were those who had a faith in God. So go figure.
Yeah.
The second part of your question was,
why doesn't he answer all prayers?
Yeah.
So this depends on what you mean by answer. So for example, my children ask me for chocolates for breakfast for Nutella every day. What do you think my answer is 99% of the time?
Yes.
It's no. Is no an answer? Now, did I say no because I'm unloving?
No.
Why did I say no?
Precisely because you are loving.
Bingo. I actually care for them more than just their momentary whim. Now, that's just one level, at least it's a framework to go, God is a perfect Heavenly Father to us. He always listens to our prayers, he always answers. And we have to trust that all his answers, we have to trust, are in our ultimate best interest. It might not undoubtedly not feel like it a lot of the time. That's what we learn from Christ again. In his suffering in the Garden of Gethsemane, he said, God, if it's possible that there's any other way other than suffering, please. Or did he change his tack though? He said, but if not, your will be done. And that's our constant prayer. Your kingdom come. In other words, your kingdom is no pain, no suffering, no tears. Your kingdom come, God, make all bad things right. But your will be done. It's both at the same time.
And the caveat then with all of this is like, yes, all of this is true, but can you speak to like the tact of like someone is suffering? Sometimes the answers won't and are useless and probably are maybe an unloving thing to give.
Yeah.
And the timing and the tact.
Yeah.
And
That's everything. That's the second part of Peter's encouragement. So verse 16 of 1 Peter 3, he says, give your answer, defense, whatever it is, with gentleness and respect. So in other words, Jesus put it this way, when he sent his disciples out to evangelize, he says, be as wise as a serpent and as gentle as a dove. Where Christians do a great job of being wise as doves and gentle as serpents. We get it backwards. So when someone is suffering, you don't go in with your apologetics debate. You go and bake them a lasagna. You go and clean up their dishes.
Jesus.
You go be Christ like Jesus did for us, and you sit with them and you love them in their suffering and love them.
I wrote this down. It was verse of the day today, which won't be the same day as when you listen to this, but a verse we always talk about is the harvest is plentiful, workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field. This is Jesus to his disciples. It had been lost on me until this morning when it was emphasized. The previous verse is when he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them. Why? Because they were harassed, they were helpless, they were like sheep without a shepherd. And then he said to his disciples, go, the harvest is plentiful. And I love that, it's that, like, just have compassion. Just look at someone and be like, how would I feel if I was in their shoes and move from that position? How do I share the gospel using Halloween? Probably when you're listening to this, we've just had Halloween and...
All right, I'll give this is an absolute apologetic answer. So when, we're in our culture, it's so weird. The Christian world of the non-material, the immaterial is mocked, right? Like an alive Jesus, angels, and all, God. But everything else, So I use that as an apologetic. If someone's asking, I go, I usually do this. Have you had experiences in the darkness that you can't explain that freak you out? Like, have you experienced things late at night? And have you known something's there? I have not yet met one person that has said, nah. Every person, if they've been honest and there's no one else in the room, have gone, yeah, I've had things. Okay, so you've experienced the dark side of it. There's a light side. Yeah, it's good, and it's pure love. So that's how I do it.
That's great. Whoa, that's cool.
Because most people have watch horror films, pornography, seen stuff, experienced things. That opens themselves usually up to the dark side of the spiritual world. So they have experiences and they don't talk to anyone about it because then they think people call them crazy. Yeah. But everyone's had one.
Yeah.
They just don't talk about it in Australia.
That's great.
That's great. That's actually such a simple response, but it is so profound at the same time. That's great. I love that.
Well, I think that's the end of our conversation today. Jono, thanks so much for everything that you've brought. I think that last point is a great example of what I love about you. You take a step back and you look at the world around you, you look at your faith, you look at who Jesus is, and you just think a little bit more about it. And that's what you encourage me with. And if you're listening today, I really hope that you've been encouraged by that as well. So thank you so much. And thanks for listening, guys. We will see you in the next episode.
See you next week.